Thank you for listening to the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast with hosts Clara and Jimmy Hinton. If you're new to the podcast, please look us up on your favorite podcast app, subscribe, like, and share so that you never miss an episode. If you'd like to further support us, visit patreon.com/speakingout and check out the different rewards. You'll find exclusive rewards if you sign up as a patron of the podcast. Thank you for your support, and let's get into the show. Welcome to this week's podcast. Thank you, as always, to our growing number of patrons.
I know, I'm excited because the more we grow our patron number, the closer we are to having our
retreat.
Yes, retreat, where we get to meet so many of you in person. So let's keep doing this.
Absolutely.
I'm excited about that.
I am too.
Yes.
And the most important thing that I'm excited about, I shouldn't say most, because meeting our patrons, meeting our patrons would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
I feel like these guys are family to us, and we interact with them all the time, and it's just cool.
Yes.
So the one of the important things is that we're doing a monthly Zoom training. We just got done right before we pushed record for this episode. So patrons, you'll notice we're wearing the same clothes. It was.
We didn't match this time like we did on Saturday.
It was phenomenal, and the interaction that we get from our patrons and the comments during the live streams are just fantastic, and just so beneficial, not only for our patrons but for us too.
These trainings are very hands-on and very interactive. I know that you would love them and benefit so much from them. It's a lot different than doing this type of session where we simply talk and are recorded. This is an interaction between patron and between us.
That's what I love about the lives.
We learn a lot in those sessions.
Yeah,
we
for
truly
sure.
do.
So if you would like to partake in these trainings, which will be ongoing for quite a while, I anticipate probably at least a year.
Probably,
There's at least going to be 12, and we do them once a month. You can sign up at the $25 or up tier, and you will have access to both upcoming lives and past, because they are recorded and posted on patreon.com/speakingout. So there's the little plug. Here is the question for today, and this was the topic of our live stream that we just finished. Are paid services to do background checks worth it? I get asked all the time, hey, would you recommend a service that I can pay, whether it's a one-time fee or a monthly fee, whatever, where I can do a background check that kind of covers this broad spectrum? So sex offender registry, it'll search criminal records, it'll search late fees and credit scores and all that stuff. Is there a service that you recommend where we can pay and get this all-in-one comprehensive background check so that we can know that somebody's free and clear? The answer is a resounding no. No,
Don't waste your money.
I don't ever recommend one. I've never recommended a paid background check, and here is why. We did a live demonstration just for over an hour. We did a live demonstration showing people how to do their own free background checks that is very inclusive. It includes looking at sex offender registries. It includes looking at court dockets, how to look them up. We actually went through in real time and showed people how to look them up.
We did the real deal. We actually put in certain names and
we used real names, real cases.
It was the real deal. Really, I think everyone should be, privy to this information.
Yep.
We can't really do that in this type of session, but honestly, if you can at all join that tier of being a patron, you will receive valuable information.
It's very helpful.
It is.
But we looked at sex offender registry, court dockets, news articles, and social media. And what's interesting is there, my little pop-up just said that the cloud recording is ready for that Zoom that we just did, so I can repost the playback for our patrons. So what was interesting is we started with my dad, who's incarcerated and is a Tier 3 sexually violent predator, SVP, who is absolutely 100%, 150% required to be on the sex offender registry. Lo and behold, he's not on the registry. Even incarcerated people have to be, because many incarcerated people get out. A lot of them are in and out of prison. It is vital and required by law
I was going to say it's required. Yes.
that sex offenders who are also incarcerated, not just out here on the outside, that they all be registered as soon as they step foot inside of a county jail. They need to be registered. So we showed that the system's very broken. It's very flawed. I talked about reasons why he's not on the sex offender registry. I just made a phone call yesterday and talked to somebody, and it was an eye-opener. This person is very high in the prison system in Pennsylvania, and said, this happens all the time. He's like, this is actually really common. These people fly under the radar and don't get put on the registry because it's human error.
You know, we hear stories of that happening when murderers get out, and the information isn't out about them, or
Nope.
other offenders, you know, who have strings of theft or whatever. But here it is, a sexually violent predator with a life sentence and not registered.
Now imagine the sexually violent predator, the Tier 3 SVP, who doesn't have a life sentence, who's not on the registry. And believe me, they're out there. There are a lot of them.
They are.
Who they never wound up on the registry. They get released from prison. Nobody's caught this yet. And we just mentioned how many different facilities has he been in? He's been in county, SCI Pittsburgh,
5,
SCI
actually,
Camp Hill, Rockview and Benner.
5,
Five different facilities.
5.
Not one of them caught this error.
And he's just one of thousands upon
Absolutely.
thousands.
They're
Yes.
everywhere.
You know what's frightening too, and we didn't mention it in that training, but across our nation, we are seeing that prisoners are being released by the thousands
Yes.
upon thousands. There won't be background information available on
Nope.
a lot of them. We will not know what their crime was. And you might say, well, why is that important? It's very important.
That's
to
right.
know. Very, very important. to
Well, the
know.
other thing too, I mean, that's a good point too, because in the training that we just did, we looked at his court dockets, and there's a magical court docket that lists 197 charges, and it's been there. I mean, I
It's been there for 11
regularly
years,
look at
right.
his records.
Yes.
It's gone, vanished, gone. And so I talked to my friend yesterday, and I said, not only is he not on the sex offender registry, but his court docket has all these hundreds of charges just vanished, disappeared. I was like, they're not there. And he goes, yeah, he said, I can tell you exactly why that happened. He said, in Pennsylvania, we just passed this. He said, I just did a training in Harrisburg where we're required, well, not we, because he's in the prison system, but the courts are required to literally scrub records, criminal records. I kid you not. I'm not making this up. And it's part of, I forget what the program was called, what he called it, but Pennsylvania also has the ARD program, ARD. And I can't remember what it's an acronym for. And this just came to mind. We've had this for several years now.
Yeah, that's quite a while.
But the ARD
yeah.
program is for first-time offenders, regardless of what your offense is.
Right.
You can, if a judge so decides, they can give you a slap on the wrist, make you go out and do some manual labor,
Community service. Yeah.
and your record is literally scrubbed permanently from the court system.
Expunged. Yeah, I saw that happen many, 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 many times in my other job. Many, many times. Yes.
So yeah, do you really want to trust this system? The answer is no, but it gets worse. We had, I showed in the training one guy who, this guy was a really bad sex offender. I actually had a hand in helping get him discovered and arrested. He has a criminal investigation. He pleads guilty to all the charges. He gets sentenced. He is ordered by a judge, court ordered, not to step foot inside the church because the crimes were so heinous and the trauma was so deep with his victims and the victims' families that this judge said, you are ordered to not step foot in that church. Go and look up records. He's not on their sex offender registry. Court dockets do not exist. They're not there. Mm-mm. Turns out that he appealed, and there were two judges who kind of went head to head a little bit. The senior judge overruled the other judge and overturned the sentencing because of a technicality on the statute of limitations in Pennsylvania. He literally walks out of prison, walks right back into the church. I kid you not, and I know because I know there's a whole news article. I spent time with the victim's family, a lot of time with the victim's family, both on the phone and in person. He literally walks right back into the church building the very next Sunday. And he's there, to my knowledge, he's there to this day. That was back in 2019.
Which brings up quite the interesting little caveat. If the people in that church know he pled guilty, and they do, because it's a small hometown community, and they all know that he pled, was in prison, got released because of a technicality on the time of reporting. But how does he even have a following? And that goes back to our age-old question, what in the world is wrong with our people?
They always have a following, and that's the problem. If you're relying on background checks, if you're relying on people at church to be honest, aside from the victims' families, they're typically silenced or run off, and in this case, they were run off from the church and silenced. They attempted to be silenced, but they were pretty hardcore. I was so proud of the parents of these victims, but they were pretty quickly run off. So you no longer have victims or victims' families at that church. So here you have this man who is this loving man who just loves kids, just loves being around kids, just loves spending time, volunteers to be with kids, volunteers to teach kids, takes them on mission trips to Mexico, served, and he's got quite the credentials, served for over 40 years as a founding board member of Western Pennsylvania's largest Christian camp in the Churches of Christ.
And now his criminal records are expunged.
And he's squeaky clean. Right. So you land on the doorsteps of that church and you're like, my goodness, this man's wonderful. Or you say, something about this guy doesn't sit right. I'm going to do a background check. Or in Pennsylvania, here's the kicker. Oh, this just came to my mind. Pennsylvania, for anybody who volunteers at any organization, including a church, it is required by law for all of us who work with kids, whether it's volunteer or paid, doesn't matter. We have to have both a criminal background check and a child abuse clearance background check. Those two checks are required by law. I have to keep a file at our church. I have a big, thick file folder.
Sure you do.
Of our volunteers.
Yeah. Sure.
They have to be current to within 5 years. Guess what? This guy goes up to volunteer to teach a class, and I'll guarantee these elders will do it and applaud him and say,
Sure.
my
He's
goodness,
squeaky clean.
how wonderful that this man is back. And you can read the article
Yeah.
if you think I'm kidding. They say, the only problem is we have to do a background check on brother Clyde. You know what? No problem.
Clean.
They do a background check. His background check is perfectly squeaky clean. This man spent time in prison. In March of 2019, he pled guilty.
Charges. He pled guilty.
He has three. It's either 3 or 4 of his victims are dead due to suicide.
It's tragic. Just tragic. Yeah.
He would pass with flying colors this background check. So the other part of that, what we showed and what we demonstrated, was both social media and looking up news articles on him. Just so happens that there's a gold mine of news articles that were really well written by a journalist friend of mine, and all the dirty details are in these stories. So if you didn't do your due diligence, if you just paid for a background
That
check,
wouldn't pop up. That wouldn't be.
he'd
part
come
of
up.
it. Yeah.
He'd be
squeaky
like your
clean.
model teacher.
Yeah.
Be like, oh my goodness, he
yeah.
came back clean.
It's frightening, Jimmy, as we discussed in the other session. It's frightening if we are not active and doing our work
Yep.
and going through layers of research ourselves. We won't get a true picture of who this person is.
Yep.
We won't get a clear background.
That's
on
right.
them. Yeah.
And so it really is up to us to do our due diligence. And the thing about that is it's free. The
Yeah.
only thing it cost us is time. And we did, we looked up how many people in
Quite a
an
few.
hour and
about-
15
yeah.
minutes. We looked up like 4 or 5 different
Right.
people. And some of those were on the fly. Somebody asked a question about somebody else. And I was like, let me look.
Yeah.
Looked it
Yep.
up. Boom, there it is.
Right.
So, we really give the tools to show people how to look really, really far and wide, because just doing a blanket background check, even if it's checking the sex offender registries and state police criminal records, FBI records, there are some background checks that they'll include FBI records because that crosses state lines. That's on a federal level. And then what else? Child abuse clearances. All of those. Some of these people who recently got out of prison will pass every one of these checks with
Well,
flying
what's
colors.
frightening is a lot of these records are being done away with.
Absolutely.
As per our law right now.
That's right.
So we're in pretty rough shape here if we don't start doing our own work.
Yep. So we've got to be the ones to do our homework, whether we like it or not. We've got to be the ones to be equipped. And I'm telling you,
And know how. We have,
you
to,
have
know
to know
how
how.
to do it.
You
We
have to know how. That's essential.
We do.
And think of not just churches, but think school teachers. Think of how many school teachers. I'm actually getting chills right now thinking about this. How many school teachers have actually been in prison for this crap? And they will pass background checks with flying colors.
Yeah.
I'm telling, this is not hypothetical. We demonstrated that this is the case. It's a broken system, but there are enough breadcrumbs, if you know how to find them,
Yeah.
that you can put pieces to the puzzle together, and you can be like, whoa.
It does take time
Whoa.
and it does take patience.
It does.
And it takes diligence on our part to sit
Yes.
and focus and really do the work. But it can be done. It needs to
Yeah.
be done if we're going to keep kids safe.
I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to who've paid for these services. Usually it's at churches, and probably because mostly that's where I did most of my trainings. But they would come back and they'd be like, like thumbs hooked in the suspenders,
Well,
like just so proud, because they're like, we do background checks here, and we pay for these services that do. They're inclusive. They include state police. They include, the state police criminal. They include FBI background checks. They include child abuse clearances. They include sex offender registries. and we've done our homework.
This has
And
helped.
I'm not making fun of them.
No, because this has helped me in my job when I hire someone.
That's right.
Because I used to do the quick check and think that person's great,
Because you don't have
nothing negative.
unless you know the system,
Right.
you don't
And
have any reason. You don't have any reason to question it
No.
otherwise. Because, and this is the kicker. A lot of these, or probably all of them, really, all of these paid services will put that big boom guaranteed
that
ribbon
stamp
guaranteed
of approval, the seal,
and they're right.
Yeah.
They're not wrong.
No, because if nothing shows,
if there's a criminal background check, our service will catch it. They're not wrong.
right, they are not wrong.
They're not wrong at
No.
all. The problem is that we have a really, really broken system.
Of reporting.
And
we really do.
people fall through the cracks all the time who shouldn't be falling through the cracks. And that includes all of these that I just mentioned, the sex offender registry, the state police criminal checks, the FBI background, the child abuse clearances. All of those are very, very, very broken systems. And all of these rely on human data input.
Right. I was going to say, and
where you have a weak link, you have a broken chain.
And right now we have a lot of weak links because we're so short-staffed.
That's exactly right.
Overworked. The system itself, a lot of these reporting systems are broken and constantly need updating. There's not enough people to help update, and so you have systems that are down a lot. We saw that, links that don't work and just they refer you to someplace else, and it's a nightmare.
Yeah,
it really is.
Well, then you get into tricky things like crossing state lines. So you have, prison to prison or municipality to municipality. You have, say somebody's arrested 2 counties over, but they also committed a crime in Somerset County. Well, then Blair County has to communicate with Somerset County, and all the pieces have to align just perfectly for communication back and forth.
Right.
Well, there are broken lines
Whereas
of communication
you said
everywhere.
state to state.
State to state.
Something.
You have county to county.
Yeah.
You have jail to
It
jail.
gets
Prison
really
to prison.
complicated.
And it is a wildly broken system.
I'm going to refer back to our fruits tool again. That fruits tool is invaluable. That's all I have to say. It just helps so much to line things up, and it fits perfectly with what we demonstrated in that other session on using tools to research people's backgrounds. I think it just works perfectly with that, right in alignment with it.
Well, you have to use the combination of all of these. You have to look up. And I'm not saying, well, it's a broken system, so don't look people up. Not at all. No. You look and you look deep, and you know what you're looking for. You have to have all those things aligned perfectly. And so we had people who are on the sex offender registry, but you couldn't find court documents. We had people that you could find court documents, but not on the sex offender registry. We had people who you couldn't find either, but then you would find news articles. And then we had people who didn't fit any of those, but then on social media, you're like, whoa. And then the one that we mentioned, that this guy, just is a complete train wreck. And he's getting like the guy got kicked out of church, and I said, "Do you realize what it takes to get kicked out of church by church leaders?"
Right.
If you're, I'm not talking about victims of abuse because they get kicked out all the time. I'm talking about somebody for child exploitation. Do you realize what it takes to get kicked out of a church?
A lot.
Yeah. And so here's a guy who gets kicked out, who's been reported. I personally reported this gentleman. I know that church leaders reported this person. He was reported to state police. He was reported to NECMA, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Reported to multiple agencies. In every sense of the word, this person is squeaky clean, but he's leaving a trail of destruction, both at church, which you wouldn't know unless you talk to the church.
Right.
But on social media,
he's
my
red flagged
goodness.
there. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Right.
And so we demonstrated that instead. Like, if you just rely on background checks and you're like good to go,
No. We can't
you're in
rely
trouble.
on any one of those things.
No, that's
It's gotta
right.
be a combination.
That's right. It has to be all
and
of them.
Put it together.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Then,
And then the news articles too. Like some of these people aren't on social media,
right. Right. So,
but you can find news articles.
and often, if it's been more than a couple years, you've got to do digging.
Mm-hmm.
You know, use a combination of words in your word search. Keep trying. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's a job.
it is.
It's a job, but we have to do it if we are going to prevent more children from being abused.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, and this can apply to all kinds of things. So this applies to a concerned church member who sees somebody at church and you're like, something's not sitting right.
Right.
It applies to people who are taking on volunteers at their organization. Think camps. Think
After school programs.
yeah, sports.
Right.
On and on and on
Volunteer coaches. You're
Coaches.
right. Just
bus drivers.
Right.
And then you get into your employment, school teachers,
how about
pastors,
your aides, your
church
aides
volunteers,
who
yeah, school
volunteer,
aides.
your PTA workers who volunteer.
Yeah,
You have
on
a
and
whole
on and on.
host.
And as
of
we just
people.
found out, a board member
Right.
literally just got a message
Yeah.
right before we push record. A school board member, current
Yeah.
and coach, sports coach.
Right.
My sickness is finally catching me.
We have been passing this tickle cough back and forth.
Oh, it's driving me
I don't
nuts.
know. It's all around town. We're not the only ones. Yeah. I don't know what it is. First, I thought it was allergies. I thought it was bronchitis. Then I'm back to allergies. Now I think it's a combo of everything.
Yeah, I think mine's just like
Just
sinus.
crazy.
Not a full blown sinus infection. It's just sinus garbage. I did do a COVID test.
I
tested
did too.
negative,
I was negative. So. When
but COVID is going around.
I know. It's on the uptick
So
again.
lots of fun
Right.
stuff.
Yeah.
But all that to say, guys, man,
We have to do our work.
we've got to do our
Yeah,
homework.
we have to, and we have to know how to do our
That's
work.
right. And it's not that
Yes.
hard. It's not that difficult. It's not impossible. It's not like this Mount Everest that we're like, okay, like some people can climb Everest and some of us are fat, you know, we'll never make it to the, it's not
No,
like
we
that.
need to.
Everybody's
right.
capable of doing these checks. Regardless of your education background, everybody's able. And I think everybody has somewhat of a responsibility to do
We
our due
do.
diligence.
Yes,
whether
we do.
whether you're the one hiring somebody or you're just a parent, we need to be doing these checks.
It's frightening when you think about it that there are so many people out there with criminal records who are not carrying that criminal record with them. And you might say, well, what if they serve their time and blah, blah, blah. As we know, and we've talked about in session after session, these abusers don't stop.
No.
We have no indication that they are remediated. No indication
Right.
of that at all. No data to support that, which tells us that when they get out of prison, they're not remediated. They will repeat the pattern. They will
And they
repeat the
may
crime.
not be on any criminal
registry or anything like
search
that. So it's up-
database anywhere.
Right, that's
They
scary.
may walk out of prison.
It's very scary.
And that, again, it's not
Right.
hypothetical. We gave the evidence in real
This is
time.
the
We
real
actually
deal.
did a
Right.
demonstration
Yeah.
and showed here's somebody who walked out of prison, who pled guilty to all these charges, that has dead victims.
Scary.
Walked
Scary.
out.
Yeah.
Walked out of prison.
But there is a
right into
responsibility
church.
on our part
scot-free.
as family members, as parents, as grandparents,
Mm-hmm.
as members of a church family, as employers, as working with employees. We have a responsibility.
Yeah, we do. We really
Yes.
do.
Yeah.
So the information's out there. I just, it's up to you if you take hold of it. And I'm not saying like you have to pay and watch our training. I mean, if you want to do the work, nobody trained me. For me, it was just hours and hours and hours of sitting down and figuring this all out. But that legwork has been done. That's a shortcut. But if you want to do it completely free, like I did, and knock yourself out, but do it. Do something.
Do something.
Because
the golden nugget
That's
is
right.
don't believe what's out there as being true, because it's not. It's incomplete information or just no information at all.
Yeah. I mean, just
Yeah.
paying to do a background check,
Right.
that doesn't cut it.
No.
Not in today's age. And it's getting worse. It's not getting better. Trust me on that one.
Right.
So, yeah, do your homework. Be safe out there. There are a lot of criminals walking
And
among
let's
us.
keep our kids safe.
And,
Let's do all we can
let's
to
search
keep our
and-
little ones safe.
Yep.
Yes.
Search and do our best to find these people out, because Lord knows the system won't do it for us. That's a fact. So thank you guys for tuning into this episode, for all your love and support, for all the comments we get, whether you're
Yes.
patrons or not. I have people routinely who comment on YouTube, and I appreciate that. I don't always get to answer people, but I do read all the comments.
I get a lot of
it's
personal
fantastic.
messages as well as emails. Thank you so very much.
Yeah.
Everything's appreciated. Thank you.
Absolutely. You guys are awesome. We love you, love your support, and hope you have a great day, and we'll catch you next episode.
Thanks again for listening to today's episode. A special thank you to our patrons who make this podcast possible. Please help us get the word out by searching for the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast in your favorite podcast app. Be sure to hit subscribe and rate the show. Please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a patron and check out the rewards our patrons receive.